And we are back. It is now November, and we're headed toward, I guess, a very, very lonely Thanksgiving for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You're here, right? You're hanging out.
Oh yeah. Gonna stay here in town. Thought about hitting back. Because I did the intrepid journey right at the beginning of all this.
Yeah,
Whatever that holiday was, it was in May.
yeah,
But I'm thinking, you know what? Had good luck. Don't
yeah.
just don't push it, brother. Should we talk? Should we mention Sean?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just, look, it's a weird thing for me because I talked about it on the radio. Sean Connery, I'm talking about, of course.
Yeah,
Double
yeah,
007, number one.
and of course Alex Trebek recently
And
too.
Alex, which is actually a tougher one for me. Sean, I talked about him a little bit on the radio. Met him many times, of course, all those movies, all those junkets
Yeah.
that I did with Sean. But to be honest with you, not my favorite Bond. I'm a Roger Moore man. I know that this is. I know that all kinds of people are falling over. Bridget was a Sean Connery man. I'm a Roger Moore man. Roger was being a secret agent and loving it, where Sean was a little bit more surly.
So that's the thing. I break the Bonds out into two different archetypes. One is the gentleman assassin. That's Roger Moore.
Mm-hmm.
That's Pierce Brosnan.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of Timothy Dalton too.
Yeah.
I don't really know where Lazenby fits in here. He's kind of doing his own thing. And then there is the blue collar South London bruiser who just happens to wear a tuxedo. That's Sean Connery, and that's Daniel Craig.
Yeah, they always reminded me of guys who might have killed you anyway, whether or not they had that license.
Yeah, exactly.
I got that license, but you know what? Was going to kill you anyhow.
It's funny. I've been watching over and over, probably a little too much, the video of the BAFTA award that Sean Connery received however many years ago, 15, 20 years ago, where Billy Connolly introduced him. And it's just, it's really a joy. If you look it up online, it's really a joy because Billy Connolly is there wearing a tuxedo, which he's unaccustomed to doing. And he can't even recite the speech with a straight face. He keeps cracking himself up because the whole thing, he just hates that stuff. And then he just starts laying into Sean Connery, and it's just a couple of old Scottish blokes and having a good time, and it's really fun.
Only Billy Connolly could have got away with that. With Sean Connery. It's a deeply inside bunch of
inside Scottish thing.
Yeah,
but Sean Connery, I think, deserves credit for changing acting, and we don't often give him enough credit for that. Is he one of the all-time great actors? No, but he changed acting because he was literally the first action star. No, he's not like Douglas Fairbanks and these guys who did their own stunts and whatnot. But for the modern form, the guy who will be in a chase and in a fight and who lays out those zippy one-liners, everything that made Arnold such a big star and that's made Tom Cruise such a big star, they wouldn't be there if not for Connery first. He's the guy that built that particular piece of film history, that archetypal hero that lays out the one-liners and the original action star. And he changed it. He changed everything.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend a movie for a lot of people. Look, big long list of movies other than Bond movies for Sean Connery. So yeah, even getting stuck on that, I think is silly. But one of my favorite movies is Outland. One of my favorite movies of his is Outland. And it was just this really good sci-fi action movies, and it's just well done. Stands up to this very day. Happened to watch it the other night. Stands up to this very day. It's got to be a 35-year-old movie. So what is that? Late 70s, early 80s, something like that.
It's right on the heels of Alien, so it's early 80s. It's using the Alien look and feel a little bit to do its thing. But yeah, it's early 80s.
Yeah, thoroughly good movie. Check that one out. It holds up along with whatever Bond movies you want to check out too. Yeah. And then you mentioned Alex, of course.
Yeah.
Alex Trebek.
It's one of Canada's great gifts to us. Everyone who didn't know Alex Trebek he lived in our living rooms,
Yeah, and that's even if you're just talking about Jeopardy, that's 36, 37 years right there. Yeah. And of course, he hosted several game shows before
Yeah.
Jeopardy, back to the middle '70s, if not a little bit earlier. For years and years and years, when I lived in North Hollywood, there's a canyon up there called Fryman Canyon. And if you lived in the Valley of Los Angeles, everybody knew about Fryman Canyon, and you'd go hike up Fryman Canyon. At the foot of Fryman Canyon, where one, generally speaking, entered the canyon, the park, to walk the trail, was Alex Trebek's estate. And it's just, it's kind of pumping it up to call it a state. It was a nice, great, big old house,
Yeah.
with a big
Yeah.
old yard and everything. It was not so much on the state as it was just his house.
Yeah.
You would walk
Yeah.
at the foot of the trail and you'd see Alex, and he'd wave at folks and play with the dogs. And
Yeah.
this is going all the way back to the early '90s. He was really he was just a guy. He was just this guy,
Yeah.
every bit as bright as he seemed on that show. Alex knew the answers to all those questions.
Oh yeah.
Other than having to look at that card, he was that
Yeah.
bright. He was that bright. And met him a whole bunch of times too, and was always a little bit upset that I could never. There's a disclaimer about being on Jeopardy. You can't know anybody, on Jeopardy, or anybody who works for Jeopardy. It was one of those kind of things. If you ever want to be on Jeopardy, and I should
Yeah.
always tell people, but for the fact that I know Alex Trebek, I'd probably be on. It was my one out for a while.
Yeah.
I was never on Jeopardy. Now that's gone. I can't say that anymore.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. He had his recommended replacements, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that going forward.
I'm kind of thinking Ken Jennings might be in line for that spot. Longtime Jeopardy champion. He has a personality
Yes.
about him, but he's not necessarily a host in any context. I don't think.
There's, and I'm trying to remember the interview that I saw with him when he first announced he had cancer. There was a woman he identified as who he thought would be a great Jeopardy host. And I'm trying to remember who she was, but if you do a Google on it, you'll come up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll miss them both, and it makes watching those SNL sketches with the two of them so much better.
Alex is in a bunch of movies too, so this conversation isn't completely off.
Yeah, no, it's true.
He's mostly playing Alex Trebek when he's in movies, but he's in a bunch of them.
And on television, my favorite Alex Trebek appearance on television is the episode of Cheers where Cliff is on Jeopardy. Do you remember this?
Oh yes, my God.
And Cliff is up by like $100,000 because the categories are things they say in bars, mothers and sons, the U.S. Postal Service, right? It's a dream series of categories for Cliff. And then he bets. He could have won, right, by betting nothing, and he wound up betting everything on a question of, who are these people? And his answer to Alex was, who are 4 people who have never been in my dining room? and Alex says, I'm sorry, Cliff, you just lost everything. And he says, Alex, I can assure you, those 4 people have never been in my dining room. It's just brilliant. And Trebek plays it so beautifully because the only way it works is if he reacts to Cliff's stupidity of betting everything. It's just the incredulous look on his face. You just think, wow, Trebek's not going to get enough credit for playing himself, but he did a great job.
Oh, well, there it is.
Yeah.
Where shall we start, sir?
Well, let's start. I'm going to start off on 3 here from Kino Lorber. I got a whole bunch, but the first one is Deep Star 6. And you remember this, right? There were a whole bunch of films around the time of The Abyss that were all underwater sea monster or action films. And this was a Mario Casar and Andy Vanya production, and it was not great, but it was it was kind of like it was a little bit more like Alien Under the Water than The Abyss was. The Abyss was more like Close Encounters Under the Water, but they came out within weeks or months of each other. And I look at Deep Star 6 today, directed by Sean S. Cunningham.
Greg Evigan in that movie, BJ and the Bear.
Yeah. Right, it's not terrible. Tarian Black and Miguel Ferrer and Nia Peoples. People who are all somebody from that moment. Like, it takes us back to 1989. It's very much a late 80s kind of thing, but it's perfectly serviceable, and it comes with a whole ton of special features. The special effects supervisor and director Sean S. Cunningham do a commentary. Also has a screenwriter commentary. isolated score selections, and then lots of interviews with just about everybody you can imagine, and original EPK stuff. So
I
that
know,
is
I know, I know, I know. Carico was well, Carico.
yeah.
It was it was a bit of a mess of a company, but they spit out some interesting, the action
It,
film.
including Showgirls
Yeah.
and yeah, a lot of stuff. We've also got a double feature here. I'm going to save the best one for last. Double feature of Fear No Evil and Ritual of Evil from 1969 and 1970. Couple of cool, spooky genre films of that Rosemary's Baby kind of period. And both of them, it's it's the same series, same characters. Louis Jourdan is the star and is very, very elegant and creepy in them. And he's basically a psychiatrist who looks out for paranormal stuff. He's like a paranormal psychiatrist or psychologist. And it's got a lot of really kind of cool stuff. The occult was a big deal at that moment, mainly because of Rosemary's Baby, and then leading up to The Exorcist. So this sort of slots in right between the two of those, but it's worth checking out. It's got a commentary on it, on both films, from Gary Girani, who is a film historian and screenwriter, and some images. And then the last one, Tim, you're going to remember this: Clint Walker in 1974 in the film Killdozer.
Oh hell yeah!
This came out before The Car, and the idea of I mean, look, Killdozer. It's a bulldozer is taken over by some kind of a life form and goes on a rampage. Um, I don't think they actually had a script before they thought of the title. I think this is one of those Roger Corman things where somebody said, OMG, what about a movie called Killdozer? Great. I love the title. What's the plot? I don't know. Let's think up something.
Oh, dude, that was like the progenitor of a few movies that go all the way up through. A couple of years ago, there was a movie called Rubber
Yeah.
about a tire, a killer tire.
Yeah.
And of course, you had Overdrive, which was an
Yeah.
adaptation of
Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, adaptation
Yeah.
of the Stephen King novel. So these things have been getting pissy and killing us for a while now.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite fun. It's got a commentary on it by a couple of film historians and critics, and an interview with the director Jerry London. So that's a lot of fun. We also we've also got a couple of Todd Browning movies. Todd Browning, really significant figure in film history, made the film Freaks. That's what he's most famous for. But before that, we get a couple of silent era films here that are from the one from 1920, one from 1923. 1920 is Priscilla Dean in Outside the Law, with a new 4K restoration from Universal Pictures, and then Drifting, made 3 years later, along with White Tiger. Also stars Priscilla Dean along with the great Anna May Wong, the original Asian superstar in silent films. Todd Browning really, some people like to try to call him like the David Lynch of the silent era. I don't know if that's quite right, but I think it's definitely true that all of the monster films that defined Universal in the 1930s are really the table is sort of set for them by the things that he did in the silent era, and these are two terrific Blu-rays.
Well, he made a damn good Dracula, Todd.
Yeah,
with Lon
yeah,
Chaney, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
I think he made it before he made Freaks.
yeah. You're right. You're right. There's audio commentaries on here with Anthony Slide, and some musical score, isolated scores, another audio commentary for by Brett Wood on White Tiger, and it's really good stuff. I mean, it's a different kind of genre filmmaking than you get out of Germany at about the same time. It's not German expressionism. It's an American kind of expressionism, and it is particularly cool. And I just love the fact that they're rediscovering Priscilla Dean too, because she she didn't make it to the sound era. She vanished right after sound came in.
Todd, like your dad and like DW, was a Kentucky boy.
Yeah, yeah. We also have there were a lot of them came from Kentucky and Tennessee and thereabouts. Yeah. We've also got a couple of Michael Caine films, The Ipcress File and The Whistleblower. The Ipcress File is obviously the most famous one. That's from 1965. Another just great espionage film from the mid 60s, directed by Sidney J. Furie. Audio commentary by Furie and the editor. Another audio commentary with some film historians. An interview with Michael Caine. As long as we're talking about Sean Connery, pretty much his best friend his whole life. They of course made The Man Who Would Be King together. So Ipcress File still totally holds up. That's a terrific film. The Whistleblower, a little bit less known, but a great cast, along with Michael Caine, James Fox, Nigel Havers, Felicity Dean, John Gielgud. That's a really cool film. Doesn't really have any extras on it, but Gielgud and Caine had just some fantastic scenes together. It's really good stuff. This is from 1987. Nigel Havers in the aftermath of Chariots of Fire. And then we have a whole bunch of really awesome Clint Eastwood films. So this is what Kino has given us from their Clint Eastwood library. I don't know how they've racked all these up, because I would
I was gonna say, how the hell did they wrangle those?
Man, this is some good stuff. We've got Two Mules for Sister Sarah, directed by Don Siegel, a frequent collaborator with Clint Eastwood's. Perhaps their most famous film together was Dirty Harry. But Two Mules for Sister Sarah is a really sharp Western. And it is, of course, Clint Eastwood along with Shirley MacLaine. And Shirley MacLaine is just wonderful in it. One of the very few actresses who can totally hold her own against Clint when he's chewing the scenery. Beautifully directed, beautifully shot. There's a commentary on here by Alex Cox, who apparently does not make movies anymore. He just does commentaries on movies he loves. And a couple of TV spots and some featurette stuff and radio spots. They also gave us High Plains Drifter, another great Clint Eastwood Western.
Underrated Clint Eastwood Western. Came out not around the time of Unforgiven, and Unforgiven sort of eclipsed it.
This is 73.
Well, yeah. No, I'm thinking of Pale Rider.
You're thinking of Pale Rider. That's right. Yeah. High Plains Drifter, which has a lot in common with Pale Rider, actually.
Yeah.
High Plains Drifter is absolutely terrific. This was made in 1973. Has another audio commentary with Alex Cox. It's getting kind of funny, these Alex Cox commentaries. And it's got trailers and interviews with just about everybody involved. But still really sharp. It's right from that perfect area. The Beguiled, which was more recently remade by Sofia Coppola with Colin Farrell in the lead role, about an injured Confederate soldier at this girls' school during the Civil War. Clint is just wonderful in it. This is some of his best stuff as an actor. That's from 1971. It's definitely worth checking out. That one, if you haven't seen it, is just an absolutely beautiful film. Then we're getting a little bit more into, we've got Play Misty for Me, where Clint is cutting his teeth as a director. That's also from 1971.
I love that because it's such a minimalist film.
It is.
It just, it's more. It has more to do with like a Bob Rafelson film, 5 Pieces or something like that, than the sort of big films that we would come to know Clint as the director of.
And Jessica Walter is so creepy in this film. I mean, he lets her run with the movie. That's the beautiful part of it. He lets it be her movie, not his movie. That also has a load of extras on it. Donna Mills does an interview for this, and there's a video essay by Howard S. Berger, audio commentary by film historian Tim Lucas, lots of other stuff.
I was so nuts about Donna Mills for years. She was on Knots Landing for years. That blonde with those big eyes.
Do not get me started.
Yeah.
That's the only reason any of us watch Knots Landing at that age. Really? Well, really, it's a bunch of people on a cul-de-sac. Who cares? But Donna Mills is on it. Yeah. I'm so watching that every week. So watching it. And then the Iger Sanction. You remember the Iger Sanction?
I don't know that I do.
1975. This was one of the earlier. This is Clint trying to sort of be, he's coming out of the Westerns and doing Dirty Harry and trying to, sort of forge a more 70s contemporary action film persona. And the Iger Sanction is one of the first of those. It's a spy thriller set in the Swiss Alps. And it's all about a guy who's basically been a hitman his whole life, and he's just kind of trying to retire. But then they kill his friend, and they drag him back down into it. And George Kennedy is great in this thing. Jack Cassidy is great in it. It's a the whole alpine mountain climbing backdrop is what it's all about. It's really there just to give you a really super cool backdrop. But Clint directs it, and you can tell that he's really evolving as a director. Already mid-70s, you can tell It's not just a one-shot thing. He's not just doing the actor thing. He's doing the filmmaker thing, and it's really, really terrific. Really good stuff.
Don Siegel's a hell of a teacher.
Oh, I'll tell you, he really is. That's true.
Is what that was.
And then a few others here. Let me just put a dent in the Kino pile. Amazon Women on the Moon still has a great cult following. That came out in 1987. John Landis, John Landis presents movie, directed by a whole series of directors who all kind of do the vignette thing, included Joe Dante and Carl Gottlieb and Peter Horton and Robert K. Weiss. I mean, there's a trivia question for you. What movie featured Peter Horton and Joe Dante as co-directors?
Peter Horton, of course. If you were fans of the series 30-something,
That's right.
In the middle '80s, Peter Horton was one of the. Peter does a lot of work on television, though. Now that I think about it.
Oh, he does still. Yeah, lots, tons. Yeah. Anyway, this is sort of a fictitious kind of mystery science theater satire of the stuff that would show up on television late at night, and all kinds of other pop culture ephemera from the 70s and 80s. I mean, it's a little bit of Kentucky Fried Movie-ish. There's probably a touch of that, but it has a cult following. It's still quite fun. There's a little featurette on here about how this thing all came together, and an audio commentary with Kat Ellinger and Mike McPadden. And some outtakes and dailies from Joe Dante's personal archive. Joe Dante went and opened up the trunk for them. Shepherd of the Hills is a Henry Hathaway Western with John Wayne and Harry Carey. Betty Ford kind of holding down the obligatory female part. Not really spectacular. But from 1941, it's John Wayne, kind of emerging into his own, and Henry Hathaway is a great director. And if you're a completist, you'll probably want to check it out. It only has an audio commentary on it. Better John Wayne film is Seven Sinners with Marlene Dietrich, because John Wayne always does a better job when he's got somebody the level of Marlene Dietrich to play off of him. And this is directed by Tay Garnett and produced by Joe Pasternak. 1940. Right about the same period. I would even say this is more of a Marlene Dietrich film than it is a John Wayne film, but it's a great pairing, and it has a great kind of an exotic cabaret South Seas vibe to it. A lot of great songs in here. Marlene Dietrich sings some like "I've Been in Love Before." There's some great songs. So good commentary on that one as well.
Yeah, because they made a few movies.
They did.
Dietrich and Wayne. I think that was the first of 3, maybe 4 movies they did together.
Did they make that many? Was it 4?
Maybe it's 3, but a few for sure.
Yeah. We got Richard Pryor and Cicely Tyson in Bustin' Loose.
Oh my God, I remember seeing this movie in the theaters.
Right, 1981. It's not really a blaxploitation film because it kind of dovetails out of that era, but it still kind of has a toe in it a little bit. So
Lonnie Elder. Well, Lonnie Elder, a little, ever so slightly more sophisticated. Lonnie Elder wrote one of the writers anyway, along with Richard and Roger Simon on that movie. And of course, you got Cicely Tyson in that movie, and she came from a completely sort of different, sounder, and the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman and all that stuff. And this was one of the first ones where Richard's doing Richard. But he got to show those dramatic chops that he would show a little bit more of later. In the career as the years went on, he got to show that he could actually act when he had to, and not just tell a bunch of jokes.
Now I'm going to blow your mind a little bit. Do you know who the executive producer was on this film?
I do not know.
William Greaves.
Oh, get out! The wonderful William Greaves.
Yes, Symbiopsychotoxoplasm William Greaves. Yeah. He was executive producer on that film. I don't know what that story is. I can't imagine. I have not listened to the audio. There's an audio commentary on here, which I didn't listen to. They might get into it, but still, that must be quite a story.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, right?
Did not know that.
Crazy. Also got a Phil Joannou film, The Veil, from 2016 with Jessica Alba and Thomas Jane. I had no idea Phil Joannou was still making movies. Clearly he is. I'm glad he is. It's got some style to it. I'd like to see him go a little bit more mainstream again, but he's still hanging in there. He was the wunderkind out of USC for a minute and a half, when he made 3 O'Clock High, and then just kind of disappeared after Rattle and Hum, the U2 documentary. But he's still making movies, and this is probably, it's basically a horror film with style. Not a huge budget, but Thomas Jane is good, Jessica Alba's good, and it does make you wish that Phil Joannou could direct some bigger budget films again. Wouldn't be bad to stick him into a Marvel movie, to be honest.
Rap on Phil was always, you could see all that Hitchcock in there.
Yeah,
Just sort of like Hitchcock through De Palma, through it's like
yeah, yeah.
you can just see it all.
And then we got a couple of old Michael J. Fox films that I'm particularly fond of. One I'm really fond of, and nobody else is, and you're going to lambast me here in a moment. But the first I'm going to make mention is 1987's The Secret of My Success.
No, brother, that's me and you again.
Yeah,
Yep,
right.
I love it.
Yeah, that's a Ray Stark film, and it's Michael J. Fox exploiting his superstardom at that moment in the 1980s. Obviously he has the Back to the Future films and the TV show Family Ties, and here he's just basically they find these scripts for him where he gets to do the shtick that he's always done. Where here he's a guy who's trying to climb the corporate ladder, and it's got a great performance by Fred Gwynn in it. It's a sweet little film directed by Herbert Ross, who of course did Funny Lady, the sequel to Funny Girl, all the way up to stuff like Footloose and The Turning Point, one of the legendary Oscar non-winners. But it's got a great musical score of songs. Helen Slater is just terrific.
Slater.
So divine in it, and Richard Jordan and Michael J. Fox is charming. But I'm gonna go out here now. You're gonna lambast me. I know you are.
Yeah.
I wrote a review for Entertainment Today that might be the only good review ever published for Michael J. Fox and James Woods in The Hard Way.
Yeah, see, that's another one that I thought was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank goodness. We're on the same page.
I'm sorry, man. I think that might be LL Cool J's first or second film. He plays one of the cops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
might be.
yeah. It might have been his first or second film, and yeah, kind of dug that movie.
Well, here's the thing. It was directed by John Badham, who, of
Yeah.
course, is a total workmanlike hack, right? I mean, John Badham, who had done, War Games and Blue Thunder in the same season, and who, of course, gave us, Saturday Night Fever, and we could go on and on and on. Great John Badham films, Frank Langella and Dracula. Badham is the guy that I think Ray often quotes him as a quote saying where he said, "If anybody tries to call me an artist, I'll kick him in the ass." Very John Badham.
Warriors, get
Yeah.
out of here. But
Well,
this film was
this
most
was
death was in this movie.
Written by Dan Pine, who was a teacher, not of mine, but of some other classmates at UCLA, and Len Dobbs, who's been around forever.
Yeah.
So here's the story. The story is basically Michael J. Fox is going to play a cop. So to research his part, he becomes the partner of a reluctant real cop played by James Woods, who can't stand it. It's a buddy movie with two guys who just do not get along. And of course, formulaic movies of the 80s, you know where this goes. Michael J. Fox always getting on his nerves. But here's the thing. There's a scene in here which riffs off of something that is rather well known in Hollywood, where and I'll only put it this way, where they're in the urinal and James Woods is doing what he's doing, and Michael J. Fox is trying to imitate his urinal body language. Right? He's that method, right? He's trying to really, really get into the way the whole thing works in the urinal. And he sneaks a peek and recoils. And if you know any of the Hollywood rumors, in that moment, I remember the press screening, the entire auditorium lost their minds. And you can even see James Woods crack a smile because he knows that this is just it's an inside joke. It's not even that inside. And it's a lot of fun. So I really enjoy this movie. It's got an audio commentary with Badham and Rob Cohen, who was his producer and second unit director, of course, is a director in his own right, started the Fast and the Furious franchise, along with Dan Kramer, who's a film historian. It's a really, really good audio commentary.
Yeah.
And then three more real quickly here before we jump into some other stuff is actually, you know what? Let me do these. I want to do a trio of films here. And we can get back to some of the others later. I want to do this trio: Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, Son of Alibaba, and Arabian Nights, because they're all tied together. Alibaba and the 40 Thieves is, of course, from 1944. Son of Alibaba has a great cast. Tony Curtis being all hunky and Tony. and Piper Laurie. That is from 1952. And then tucked right in between the two of them, actually earlier than Alibaba, I thought it was between the two, is Walter Wanger's Arabian Nights with Sabu and Maria Montez. Terrific. I mean, look, Hollywood doing exotic Arabian Middle Eastern stuff at that point in time is rather silly. It's quite funny at times, but it's very much of the period, and these are really fun films. Philippa Berry does the audio commentary on two of them, on Arabian Nights and Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, and then Lee Gambin does the audio commentary for Son of Alibaba. The I did not watch Arabian Nights; that I did not have time to get around to. But I did get around to Son of Alibaba, which because I'm a big Tony Curtis fan, just to see how it holds up. I've not seen this in ages, and I gotta say, it's really, really fun. I mean, Tony Curtis has a gift, and he always had a gift. And his gift was he knew exactly what the tenor of the movie was. If everybody else around him thought the movie was going to be serious, and in his heart of hearts he knew that this was a silly movie, he would tone accordingly, and the
Mm.
movie would benefit. If it was really intense and a real serious film, he would go there. He always knew how to modulate his performance to what the tone of the film needed to be, even if nobody else around him understood it. So he's one of the few people that really, really gets the tone of this film, and he has a great time with it. It's directed by Kurt Newman, who of course did a lot of genre films at the time, stuff like Tarzan and the Amazons. Piper Laurie is just gorgeous and wonderful. And Alibaba and the 40 Thieves is worth watching just because it has the wonderful Maria Montez in it, and she's just always fantastic and divine. Who was also in Arabian Nights. So those are classic Hollywood movies of the era. Tim, what else do we got?
We diddle around with a few new movies,
Let's do it.
so to speak. The Bill and Ted Face the Music. I know you talked about this one on the radio.
Yep.
When it came out, I gotta tell you, I was charmed by it. But I think we had come out to L.A. for whatever in like 1980, 88, 89. It was whenever they were literally shooting the original Bill and Ted movie. Right,
Yeah.
which I guess came out in '89, so it must have been like '88 or something like that. And we're in Westwood,
Yep.
and it was our first time seeing a big old movie set, and all the trucks and all that, all that stuff. And they're shooting Bill and Ted. And I see this kid, and I see this other kid, they do this scene. And I lean over to my wife and say, "You see that kid there with the dark hair? He's not gonna make it." He ain't got it. How wrong could I have possibly been? And
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed these Bill and Ted movies, in the same way that some people like the Dumb and Dumber movies. It's fascinating to me that the franchise has lasted 3 movies and stretched out over 30 years. And this
Yeah.
one, they both have these daughters. Their daughters are more or less them, only
that's the one thing that I kind of enjoyed. It's awfully tough to keep this whole shtick going. That the perfect song and the wacky time traveling, and it's not really a plot movie. It's a gimmick movie. It's the one liners and the zippy stuff that they do and the characters, and the fact that they're too old for these parts now really makes it tough to get into it, except for the part that the girls are really good. Those two girls do a fantastic job doing basically an impression of Bill and Ted.
doing the impressions of Bill and
Yeah.
Ted from 30 years ago, and I thought it was
Yeah.
really, really funny. And they sort of acknowledge it all. They sort of acknowledge how old
Yeah.
they are, so some of that is kind of fun. Anything on that, by the way? I imagine they
Yeah,
bother?
no, yeah. There's a few things. There's the panel that they did at Comic-Con, and then behind the scenes featurette, and a couple other little kind of behind the sceney featurette things. But it's enough. I mean, any more than that would have been overkill, I think. So I guess if you love the movies previously, you'll probably be fine with that one.
You can just sort of like fill out the collection there. Spontaneous is the movie that I got a chance to talk about on the radio. It's a sort of a dark comedy, that's I think anyway, alluding to some of the things that are going on in society now. Basically, the notion inside this little movie is this: spontaneous explosion, not combustion, where people burst into a ball of flame and leave nothing but ashes, but spontaneous explosion is what's happening to a group of children, high school kids, of a certain age in this small town. They just, for no reason whatsoever, just blow the hell up.
Ew.
It happens the very first time in the movie, and at the top of the movie, and it keeps happening throughout the movie. And there's a whole thing that's going on. And it's sort of interesting. Fortunately, this is a comedy, so as sticky and icky and disturbing as this all sort of is, it plays out in the context of this sort of comedy. And I rather enjoyed it. I think it was it's streamed perhaps on Amazon Prime or something like that. Brian Duffield film, Piper Perabo in the movie, Charlie Plummer, and a wonderful performance by young Miss Catherine Langford, from whom the story's the point of view, the entire movie, the entire story is kind of told. Kind of dug that movie quite a lot. Wicked little idea for a horror movie, sort of a contemporary horror movie in the vein of what Jordan Peele has been doing with his work in the horror genre, Us and Get Out, Antebellum. A successful young black woman finds herself transported to and trapped in the antebellum South, the pre-Civil War South. And she has to figure out how she's going to negotiate and deal with all of that. You know, there's some real that in and of itself is actually a pretty good idea.
It's
Not
a it. Yeah, go ahead. I know where you're going.
yeah, you do know where I'm going.
Yeah,
Their execution of it, and their sort of understand.
yeah.
They did not go the way that the film's narrative suggested that they might have. Janelle Monáe, by the way, starring in the movie.
Janelle Monáe is absolutely terrific. The two guys who directed it, who come from commercials, you can excuse me, you can kind of tell that they come from commercials because they don't shape the film quite correctly.
Mm.
It's not paced and shaped terribly well. And the structure of it, it tries to be a little bit. It sort of tries to sit somewhere between Jordan Peele and M. Night Shyamalan,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I would say it's not enough Jordan Peele, and it's maybe too much Shyamalan. You know,
Yeah.
right? It's a little too concerned with cutting out of scenes and back into other scenes in a very manipulative way to prevent you from figuring out what's going on. And by doing that, it's a lady doth protest too much thing. You actually do start to figure out what's going on
Yeah, and
because
the
it
thing of
calls
it is,
attention to itself.
it didn't need all of that, because you know what? If this is this scenario is a horror movie all by itself. This movie can be
Yeah,
about of exactly what it looks like it's about. You don't
yeah,
have to make it about anything more than what it looks like it's about. I promise you. If you drop me, and for whatever reason, and I
yeah,
don't, because it won't matter what the reason is. So anyway,
yeah.
but nevertheless,
But
a hell of a concept.
yeah, Bush and Renz, by the way, that's the team, the
Yeah,
directing team, Bush and Renz.
Gerard Bush, and I don't know the other guy.
Yeah, they're. I mean, they're great. Their commercials are great, and their movies may end up being great too if they just learn to kind of segue out of that commercial mindset and into the film mindset. But I will say this: Janelle Monáe is terrific in it. You know,
Yeah.
she really came on strong in the space thing.
Oh,
Color numbers,
oh,
hidden
Hidden
figures.
Figures. Thank you very much.
You know, she came on strong in that. We you know, kind of one of the few recording artists who kind of has been able to show that she has chops on the film side as well. And you know, I look forward to what she does in the future.
Well,
I think she's really good.
real strong performance in that movie about Harriet Tubman,
Yeah, yeah,
Harriet, I should say Harriet. And actually, yeah, really good. And I think it's a series called The Loop, the second
yeah.
incarnation of a series called Loop. Not bad at all. Susan Sarandon film. Don't get enough Susan Sarandon
Blackbird.
films. But you know, yeah, and directed by Roger Michelle. A lovely film, remake of a Danish film, if I'm not mistaken. You know, a lovely, deeply moving film. A terminally ill mother arranges, to bring the whole family back. One of those sort of things. And Susan Sarandon is just absolutely exquisite in this movie, reminiscent of her and Julia Roberts some years ago.
Yeah. It,
Yeah.
I mean, it's I think the film is good enough. I wish it had been better. I'm very you know, movies like this seem they just, and it's probably not fair to it, but it just feels like it belongs to a different era, like it belongs to the 1980s or the early 1990s, because there's so many stars in this. It's Susan Sarandon and Kate Winslet and
Yeah.
Lindsay Duncan and Rainn Wilson and Sam Neill, and then you get Mia Wasikowska, and you're like, oh my goodness, there's so many stars in this thing, and everybody's competing with everybody else. And I mean, yes, it's a bunch of people gathered on this little rural part of New England, right close to the ocean, because mom is, Sam Neill is dad, Susan Sarandon's mom. She's dying. She wants to go out, on her terms. So it's a euthanasia thing. She's brought the whole family together, and of course, all the baggage gets aired and all the dirty laundry. Yeah, I mean,
Mm,
it's Susan Sarandon basically getting to do a Susan Sarandon part, and it's good. Roger Michelle is a good director, so I
not
mean,
bad.
I got nothing to complain about it, and the fact it feels a little dated to me.
Did it come with anything?
Nope, not really.
That's fine.
It's one of those bare bones deals, but it's there. It's on Blu-ray and it looks good. The Curse of Audrey Earnshaw. Some of these horror things coming out now after Halloween. I love the tagline on this. There's a new witch in town.
Oh,
Uh,
that Thomas Lee movie. Thomas
Thomas.
Robert Lee. He's the guy that wrote that, directed that film.
Did
So,
he?
yeah,
Okay.
I saw
Well,
that one for the show.
yeah, I mean it's funnier than I think it means to be. Maybe it means to be funny. Anyway, this is all about this plague that blows through this small religious community, and the woman and her daughter are the only ones who don't succumb to it.
Yeah,
And for reasons, obviously, because have they made a pact with the devil? Are they?
they're
Wait,
witches.
what?
They're witches. They are.
Yeah, they're witches. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's creepy. It's mostly designed to have just enough scare moments for you to not think too hard about how the plot doesn't really make any sense. But it's on Blu-ray. It's got some good scares to it, and it's from Epic. And fans of the genre won't find anything to dislike.
What I like, Don McKellar's in that movie, and Don McKellar
Yeah,
wrote the Red Violin.
that's right.
He's an actor, who you've seen in a lot of
Canadian.
stuff, Canadian actor, but he wrote the Red Violin.
Yeah,
And
he also wrote and directed a movie called Last Night, about the last night on Earth before the Earth ends.
oh
And
yes, I
you
remember
remember
that.
that?
Yes.
And I think Sandra Oh might be in that as well. And terrific little Canadian indie. You never learn why the Earth is going to end. It's just about the impact of knowing the end of your life, the impact of mortality dawning on all these people, and you know how you're going to go out. What's your last relationship and your last words going to be? It's a good little film. Don McKellar's a sharp dude.
Mm. Fatima, a retelling
Ah, yes.
of a story, a film. I think this story's been made into a film a few times, and years 1917 or something like that. It was in Portugal, Fatima, Portugal.
Yep.
Three young people believed that they had been visited by the Virgin Mary, and the church came in to investigate it. It was actually dubbed eventually, after many years, to in fact be a have been a sort of divine event, and folks have been telling stories about it ever since. This was a lovely movie, this particular one, that came out earlier this year, before everything sort of went south. Beautifully shot and made. Marco Ponta de Corvio, I think
Pont-
it's his name.
Marco Pontecorvo, who is the son of Gilo Pontecorvo, the longtime director of the Venice Film Festival and most famous for directing the Battle of Algiers.
Ah, yeah.
So it's the younger Pontecorvo who did this. It's he's not his dad. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. This is not the Battle of Algiers, but the event itself is most famous for how it climaxes with a kind of a solar event that a lot of people interpreted as being a divine event, and a lot of people have struggled for years to explain exactly what happened and how and why. And the movie just assumes that it is what everyone claimed it was, which
Mm.
was a divine manifestation. But no, it's a nice old fashioned, colorful melodrama, and it's very sweet, and it is noteworthy, I would add, too, for being the first release from the rebooted Picture House.
Oh,
Picture House was a big indie distributor for a while there in the 90s, and then it got shut down and folded in, I think, with Warner Brothers when Bob Burney went to Warner Brothers and got involved with Warner Independent. And Bob Burney since he was a director of distribution over at Amazon Studios, and he has now rebooted Picture House with his wife, and they're on the map again as an independent distributor. So, unfortunately, the pandemic hit, But I think once the pandemic is gone, we'll probably see more really good stuff coming out of Picture House.
That would be great, man.
Yeah.
The actor, or whom we generally speak know as the actor Peter Francinelli, directed this little movie called The Vanished, with Anne Heche and Thomas Jane and Jason Patrick and all folks that he probably knows and has worked with before. It's a neat little movie about a couple whose child disappeared on a camping trip. Thomas Jane and Anne Heche. And Peter wrote the movie. It's an original idea, original content. I don't know if it's his directing debut, but it's a fairly tight little movie that he made, sort of action mystery thriller. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Did it come with anything, man?
It has absolutely nothing on it whatsoever other than a digital copy. Digital, you can add the digital library to your the digital movie to the library, but otherwise, nope, got nothing.
Yeah.
No extras.
Anyway, good work from Peter, I will say. Jimmy Carter, rock and roll president. This is from the little documentary section. I had to pull this
Oh
out
yeah,
specifically because I had a chance to talk about it on the radio too. So Jimmy Carter, first election, 1976. I didn't get a chance to vote for Jimmy in 1976 because I was only 15 years old. But I was very much into politics at the time and followed that election quite closely. He, of course, running against Gerald Ford, who had, of course, become president after the whole thing that went down with the other guy. Richard Nixon. And you had this guy that's this peanut farmer from Georgia and running on the Democratic ticket. And it was all sort of amazing at that time that Jimmy Carter, this peanut farmer from Georgia, was running as a sort of progressive liberal president. All of these rock and rollers, and they weren't just rock and rollers, but all kinds of people from the music industry came out in support of Jimmy Carter. And I mean, it was the Cashes, and you had Dizzy Gillespie, you had Jimmy Buffett, you had Bob Dylan, you had the Gatlin brothers, Willie Nelson. Were all these
that was the
folks?
first time that ever happened.
Yes,
That kind of. I mean, we're accustomed to it now,
yeah, sure.
but that had never happened before.
Yeah, yeah, and it
Yeah.
was an interesting group of people because a lot of them were folks from country music who you might have thought would have been a little bit more, but no, they were all big supporters of progressive Jimmy Carter, and it was just this is a really really neat movie. At the end of the day, you have all that great music and all those wonderful testimonials in there, but what's really great about this movie is that Jimmy Carter is in it, all 95 years of them, and he's
It's
sitting
amazing.
just
So
amazing,
he's still. It's amazing he's made it that long.
just sharp as a tack, and he's talking about that period and what was going on and how he had to deal with some things. Again, we were talking about 1970 75 mostly here, and it's just a really really neat movie, sort of time capsule of the period as much as anything. But yeah, hell of a lot of really great rock and roll music in there too.
So we got Friendsgiving for Thanksgiving. Friendsgiving is a completely wacky movie from written and directed by Nicole Payon, with whom I am not familiar, but it's mainly about the actresses. It's assembling a very very eclectic group of actresses in a completely bonkers movie. Like at one point, Fortune Feimster, Wanda Sykes, and Margaret show up as these fairy gay mothers, and you could guess what the film is like for the rest of it. I mean, it's just wacky. um it's about Thanksgiving that basically goes incredibly wrong, and all the people who populate it, and that's usually what these kind of Thanksgiving movies are. And of course you wind up learning your lessons about life and love and family, and how to what you really are thankful for. It's got that tag on it. But yeah, in addition to Margaret Cho and Wanda Sykes and Fortune Feimster, is Malin Ackerman and Kat Dennings, and Jane Seymour is in it, Jack Donnelly, Dion Cole, Aisha Tyler. I mean, it's a pretty monstrous cast of names. Somebody pulled in a lot of favors. The one thing that I do find funny about it, and that they know is very tongue in cheek, is that they plug it as from a producer of Zoolander and Tropic Thunder. Just one from a producer of. I think that's kind of cute. It's sort of owning up to the cheesiness of that possessory credit.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? The Times of Bill Cunningham. This is a great doc that I also got a chance to talk about on the radio. So Bill Cunningham was fashion photographer for the New York Times.
This was
Uh,
Oscar nominated too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he is he's just a wonderful character for years and years and years was a fashion photographer for the New York Times. He rode around New York on his bicycle, not only taking and he was very very well known, of course, for his fashion photography, but he also took pictures of people on the street. He was a very astute and well known street photographer as well. Very often incorporating the fashion that people would wear on the streets of New York
Yeah.
as a part of, and people would, and the designers would pick up on what Bill was shooting people wearing out on the street. And not long after that, very often you would see the fashion of people on the street work its way into the whole couture of the fashion designers. So anyway, this is just a wonderful film that follows him around for years and years. In years, and he has this whole bizarre little living condition that he lived in. Basically, he lived in his studio. And This is just a really really neat documentary. Sarah Jessica Parker narrates a good chunk of it. A lot of the most important folks of the New York fashion scene.
Also got a movie called Alone, which is a pandemic movie. It's a zombie pandemic movie. And it's I mean it's fine. Tyler Posey plays this guy, this surfer, who wakes up one morning and finds that the whole world, a pandemic, has turned the world into stalking zombies. And then Summer Spiro from Westworld plays this neighbor in his apartment complex, and it's sort of now about how does he, because they're separated, how does he rescue her under the zombie condition. So it's one of those zombie movies that figures out how to be effectively a one location, very small location contained movie. Um, and Donald Sutherland also shows up because somebody's got to, you got to have somebody with a name in this thing, and he kind of steals the movie from them. But it's, for what it is, for this particular genre, it is fine. It is on the upper end, kind of the lower end of the top tier, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Another movie that kind of goes in the same vein, lower end of the top tier, is the Pauly Shore movie Guest House.
No.
Pauly Shore is more entertaining now than he was when he was actually playing Pauly Shore. I just want to say that he can do characters now. He's old enough that he doesn't have to do the thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the Weasel for years and years in the early '90s when I was a junket guy. I would every
Yeah,
one of those movies
I
from
know.
Encino Man, which I early all the Jury,
Yep.
all these movies, Biodome, every single one of them, Pauly Shore.
Yeah, and this is basically just one of those dumb kind of early '90s type comedies about this couple that buy their dream home. Unfortunately, there's this crazy dude in the guest house who will not move out now that they bought the house. The crazy dude, Pauly Shore. So both of these movies, Alone and Guest House, are from Grindstone. Grindstone, who makes a lot of these movies and then releases them through Lionsgate. We've often talked about the fact that Grindstone mostly makes movies that are action films with Bruce Willis or Robert De Niro, or else they make movies about talking animals. It's one of the two. Oddly enough, neither of these fit that. Alone is a zombie horror film, and Guest House is a comedy, but not a talking animal movie, unless you consider Pauly Shore an animal. So, but anyway, no, it's, what, it's got a real sweet sense to it, and it's perfectly fine for what it is. And then I want to make a quick mention here also of a Shout Factory G Kids animated film called Morona's Fantastic Tale by Anka Damian,
Ah,
which is just such great animation. I mean, it's so cool. Anka Damian has a really, really cool kind of avant-garde, surreal, pastel-y sensibility to her. It takes you away in a really cool way. I haven't seen an animated film that quite took me this way since, I would almost say, Yellow Submarine, to be honest.
oh, really?
It kind of, yeah, it takes you on a journey in that same way. It's very, very aggressive and stylistic and surreal. And it's wonderful because the idea, it centers around the Morona is a dog. It's a little stray little dog, and it's all about her her journey through people and different owners, and learning about life, learning about human beings. It's really a beautiful film. And again, it's called Marona's Fantastic Tale, Marona. Definitely check it out. It's a Blu-ray and DVD combo set from Shout Factory and G Kids.
Perfectly lovely. Perfectly lovely. I was thinking of moving over to a little bit of television because
Yeah, let's do it.
I've checked out some of these series. So we have season 2 of Charmed. So back in the I guess it would be the middle to late '90s, I was a big fan of the Charmed series. Which starred Shannon Doherty and who else? A few different folks over the course of the years that it was on, and then it sort of went away. And then a couple of seasons ago, 2 seasons ago, Charmed reappeared, and it's all sort in a sort of set in a sort of the exact same context. These three sisters who are the charmed ones, and all of that. But they're sort of like a Black and Latinx family. And I thought to myself, that's an interesting thing to do, But more, other than that, it's almost exactly the same as the Charmed series that I thoroughly enjoyed back in the '90s. It's ridiculously sort of romantic and silly, with these three blazingly hot young women. Who are witches and have to save the universe and everything else from everything else. This is season 2. And I'm telling you, I hope they're shooting some more of these. I can't wait for it to come back on. I've been it's nuts to me that 25 years later, I'm still a fan of Charms. But then again, I've always been a sucker for those kind
And
of series.
and that is from CBS and Paramount. Probably want to make mention of a few other CBS Paramount things here, since you cracked that open. There's Nancy Drew season 1,
Big fan of
which
that one too.
which I think is cool. I mean, I remember the original Pamela Sue Anderson, Nancy Drew from
The
back
80s.
in the '80s.
Mm.
Good grief! But I think they've done a good job of kind of reinventing it. This is not bad at all. Dynasty, the new reboot of Dynasty, is
Yeah.
in season 3. I don't think this really works at all, but clearly it works enough for some people to have made it to a season 3.
I always
Um,
wonder because again, Dynasty is series that you and I at least, back during the days of Dallas and Falcon Crest
yeah.
and Flamingo Road. This is all early '80s
Well,
stuff. Who is that meant for?
you know what? Here's part of the problem. I think that when they recently rebooted Dallas as well
Mhm.
until Larry Hagman died, and then they had no way to sustain it. But I think Empire, which of course is a riff on all of that,
Yeah.
that sort of got them all thinking, oh well, if people are ready for Empire, if Empire works, if they're ready to go there again, let's reboot everything. And I think they missed what Empire was doing, which was that Empire had refashioned it. It had kind of moved it to the next step, so you
Hmm.
can't really go backwards. But that said, I mean, clearly somebody's watching it. We also have you can get the entire Bonanza thing in a box set, but we've also got the individual release now of the 11th season of Bonanza in volume 1 and 2. So, I mean, but you can get all of Bonanza out there right now. It's not, how much Bonanza can you take, Tim?
I actually
Really?
all of it, but not all at once.
Yeah.
I see Head of the
Uh,
Class here, man.
yeah, head of the class.
I was such a big fan of this sitcom. Again, I think we're talking about the middle '80s, Head of the Class. Howard Hessman, coming off, what was WKRP in Cincinnati,
Yeah, yeah.
and all that stuff.
And before, and again, Billy Connolly, who we talked about earlier,
Would go on to
would
take over
replace
the
him.
show. Yeah.
Yes,
So
he would.
is this the Billy Connolly years, or is this the
No, this is still Howard Hessman. This is the second
season
season.
2? Okay.
Season 2, still doing. I mean, shedding Johnny Fever and being able to do this, you got to give him props. That was not easy because I still think of him as Johnny Fever. And I just watched the pilot for WKRP again recently, and I not to belittle Head of the Class, but do you remember how the pilot for WKRP ends?
Not the
It
pilot. No, it's not.
it ends where Andy, played by Gary Sandy,
Hmm.
well, it's not even the end. It's when they do the official change, but it's the scene where he brings in the pop music disc, the rock and roll,
Hmm.
and he tells Johnny, you can do this again. And he's been playing like church music and all this stuff. He's beaten down, and and Andy leaves, and it's this great moment. It's a fantastic acting moment. It's where you see Howard Hessman at his best. And here he is, a broken down, old, hippie, drug using guy sitting there. He's half asleep, and he looks at that vinyl record, and you can tell he relives his entire life in that moment, like he's reborn. And he puts it down, and he takes a breath, and he's kind of not sure if he's going to be able to do this. And then he grabs the needle on whatever music is currently playing, and he pushes it right across the music. All right, babies, you got the fever, and this is Johnny Fever, and he lets it go, and he's reborn. It is such it's one of the great moments in television history, because it's one actor taking you through a complete process in his head. It's just a beautiful thing. Anyway. So I've totally derailed Head of the Class, but yes, Head of the Class season 2. That actor is still really good, Howard Hessman.
Hey, Head of the Class gave us Robin Givens.
Yeah.
Brian Robbins, who's went on to become quite a director for a long, long time, and eventually Billy Connolly would take over that show, and it was just as funny.
Yep, it was. It definitely was. New Amsterdam season 2. Have you watched much of this?
The Doctor Show, right?
Yeah, it's a medical show.
Any good?
It's not. It's okay. It doesn't really transcend anything. It's kind of trying to do. It's trying to walk a line between all the other doctor shows, like ER went here and Grey's Anatomy went here, and it's sort of trying to find a path between all of that, and it kind of still stumbles into things that those shows did. But it's fine. It's a cool cast. It kind of, for the most part, works, because the whole premise is about being a single dad. There's a domestic angle to the whole thing. This guy, his wife has died. Ryan Eggold plays the lead part, Max Goodwin. And he's kind of trying to juggle work and life. And so it's a little bit like it dips into Courtship of Eddie's Father in some way too. It's fine. It's pretty good. And then there's also Men with a Plan, season 3. I had seen none of this. Matt LeBlanc trying to find his way with a new show too. He's never going to recapture the beauty of Friends, but this isn't bad. It's not bad. They surround him with a pretty good cast. Kevin Nealon and Stacy Keach. It's a
classic network sitcom, man.
It's kind of a classic network sitcom. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Let's see what else we got.
You know what? I'm looking at. I just saw our cartoon president, what that's supposed to talk about. Now, this is season 2. The thing that I will say about it, I didn't watch it a lot, but and I get it. It was also like it was meant to be sort of pointed at President Trump. But I got to tell you, they made fun of everybody.
Everybody. No, it's a straight up satire of everybody.
Everybody. It's a kind of. Yeah. They can keep making this well after January, and just keep on rolling with it. No reason to change anything.
They could make this for the next 20 years.
Yeah, no matter who's elected.
I mean, that's the beauty of it, is that it does. Even if it doesn't even focus on the president anymore, it could focus on anyone in the political process. You could keep this show going forever, because it all it really needs is a steady flow of ridiculous politicians to make fun of.
Yeah.
Well, we're never going to run out of that.
Yeah, and nobody.
You're never going to run out of that.
Nobody gets love. I know that people would think that that's what it's about. It's not so much.
Yeah.
Black Lightning seasons 2 and 3, I believe, is what you got there.
Yeah.
Black Lightning, not the biggest fan of the Black Lightning series. There's some things that I like about it. It's a little bit like watching a black exploitation film condensed or broken apart into a television series.
I agree,
and I'm not sure that I want to do that. I think I would rather if they had gone the way of, say, like a Daredevil or a Jessica Jones, which were this is CW, that's Netflix, so completely different sort of styles to begin with.
The way it ties in with the Arrowverse is rather clumsy, I have to say. It's not as elegant as what they've done, between Arrow and Flash and Supergirl. That's kind of the one that ties together the most organically. But what I do like about this, oddly enough, I think Black Lightning is the least interesting character on here. His daughters are the best.
It's really interesting, right? Yeah.
Thunder and Lightning really are the characters that you watch this for. He's okay, he's fine, but the girls really make it. My daughter loves Thunder and Lightning.
Yeah.
Like, she loves Thunder. She couldn't give a damn if Black Lightning took a vacation and left the show to his daughters. Forget it. But Thunder and Lightning are super cool. and so I think they might want to think about spinning that off at some point.
Oh, it's almost certainly going to happen.
That would be a good move. I think that'd be definitely a good move. We also have you seen? Is it NOS 4A2 or NOS 4A2?
I don't know how you say it either, but I did see season 1. This is season 2.
Yeah,
I
AMC show. It's a
yeah,
it's a vampire show
yeah,
with Zachary Quinto.
yeah, and it's sort of it's sort of complicated. It's very psychological. And the one that the season that I watched was all set during Christmas, with that big creepy car.
Yeah,
And it was sort of move back and forth in time, but it was pretty good. Season 2 I haven't gotten a hold of yet.
I didn't. I watched some of the episodes on here just to get a taste of it, and then I watched the extras, including a panel that they had at Comic-Con, which is very very interesting. So there's what is interesting here is that there's a, like you say, it's very psychological. There's a lot of forethought that goes into this show, and it's really quite. It really does try to reinvent the vampire genre a little bit. Want to make sure right now that we put a plug in. Stick around at the end of the show. We're going to have an interview with film producer Hadil Reda, who we had a great conversation with about The Ride, which is a movie that's coming out this Friday on Amazon Prime with Ludacris and Sasha Alexander and Blake Sheldon. Amazing true story about this BMX rider and his family. You're definitely going to want to check it out. It's been an amazing story that Hadil tells us about how the film got made and then sabotaged by the pandemic, and then had to fight their way through to get back on the calendar. So stick around at the end of the show for the interview with Hadil Reda and the movie The Ride. What else we got on the TV front here? Blood and Treasure season 1. You seen this?
I have not seen that one.
I caught a couple of episodes on it. It's kind of an international art thief show. It feels like it's somewhere, but it wants to be maybe a little bit of Ocean's 11, 12, 13 for television, maybe a touch of Simon Templar and the Saint. I wish it had a bigger budget, but as it is, it seems like they're kind of onto something. What they're like. There's the former FBI agent and all kinds of really. It's got it's got a vibe. I think they could do more with it than they are, but for a first season, for a network show, it's on its way. So I hope we get more seasons of this thing. The pandemic has obviously interrupted everything, but not bad at all.
Is this Catherine the Great? Is that the series with Elle Fanning?
So yeah. So here's what's interesting. We got 2 of them this week that are both about Catherine the Great. We've got the HBO miniseries, Catherine the Great, starring Helen Mirren.
Okay.
And then we've got season 1 of the Elle Fanning and Nicholas Hoult series, The Great.
That one I watched. I was wondering what was going on.
Yeah. So it's fascinating that they're both out at exactly the same time. Basically, the woman who in the 18th century created and built the Russian Empire. I don't know if a lot of people realize how significant Catherine the Great was, but an extraordinary monarch in history. And my mother used to talk a lot about Catherine the Great because my mother was, Prussian, and when you grow up that close to Russia, you learn a lot about your enemies. And I gotta say, both of these are pretty great. I would recommend that people watch them.
Well, the series, one with Elle Fanning, which of course we meet her as a very very young girl. Actually, I was about to say young when she was a woman at all. She was a girl, and she's carted off to Russia to be married off, and it just goes through that whole little historical period, and it sort of shows us how she learned to become the person whom you're talking about, who's the person that Helen Mirren is playing in that other
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really I mean, I love the juxtaposition of the two. I mean, if I had to choose, obviously the Helen Mirren miniseries is just incomparable. It's really really good. But it's really a nice juxtaposition between the two, and I hope we get more seasons of The Great soon.
Well, the Elle Fanning thing is kind of a comedy. It's funny. It's
different tone. It's a different tone.
A different tone completely.
Yeah. It's a lighter tone. We got a couple of FX shows here. Season 14 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and season 2 of What We Do in the Shadows.
Ah,
I don't. I have never. I'll be honest. I don't get the tone of either of these shows,
me either.
but clearly somebody does. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. 14 seasons. This is Danny DeVito's most successful television show.
Longer than Taxi.
Longer than Taxi. How is that possible? I don't get it. But people love this show. It has kind of a low budget vibe to it, which has always been how it kind of how it got on TV in the first place. I mean, if you love it, you love it. You don't need me saying anything about it. And What We Do in the Shadows, I don't know. Season 2, 10 episodes. It's based on the film, the Jermaine Clement Taika Waititi film from New Zealand, which is very popular, and which I think is rather funny and tongue in cheek. The TV show, I guess, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really capture what the movie did, but I don't know if it needs to. Anyway, it's on FX as well.
Babylon, Berlin, which is a German series. It's set in Germany in the 20s.
Yeah,
it's all the golden era of the 20s. Tom Tickfer is one of the creators of this series, which is what I like about it a lot. It's a gorgeous show.
It's really good.
Set in at a really it's a crime drama thriller, and it's just really excellent. If you love all those Tom Tickfer films of I guess going all the way back to the 90s now.
I mean,
Run Lola Run.
Yeah,
like
Perfume.
Yeah,
Perfume is another great one. The Emperor, the Princess and the Warrior.
Oh yeah, the Princess.
One of my favorites. Yeah. Oh, so good. Yeah, you know what? I mean, the fact that it's set in 1929 is really genius because it's the between the wars period.
It's the Weimar Republic, but it's like right at the beginning.
Yeah.
of the Weimar. Yeah.
Yeah, it just gets that whole cabaret moment, right?
Yeah.
It really gets it. It's just beautifully made. I mean, I don't know what they're doing in Europe, but some of the best looking television these days is coming out of Europe, not Hollywood. It's a gorgeous looking show. A lot of extras here. Behind the scenes stuff, making of documentary, which is pretty great. 16 episodes on 4 discs. That is from Kino, seasons 1 and 2 on 4 discs. Really good. Gosh, excuse me here. Monogamy, season 1, which gets the possessory credit Craig Ross Jr.'s Monogamy from UMC. This also feels like kind of a dated show. 4 different couples brought together for a therapy experiment called switch therapy in order to save their marriages. And I don't know that I really want to watch that, but it obviously means enough to somebody. I'm assuming they're probably going to get a second season out of this, but it kind of creeps me out a little bit, to be honest. It's a little bit strange. You know what also is really cool is Quiz. With Michael Sheen. This is an AMC production with Matthew McFadden, Cheyenne Clifford, and Michael Sheen, based on the true story of what this is like the UK television version of what Quiz Show was here. Quiz Show, of course, the Robert Redford film.
Yeah.
So this is a similar scandal in the UK, a giant scandal, and it all centered around Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Now, nobody here really knew about this, I don't think, because Who Wants to Be a Millionaire came here and took off, and nobody knew that there was a scandal associated with the show in the UK, but there was.
I did not know that.
I know. So that's what this is, and quite an interesting quiz show to be able to cheat your way to winning. But Michael Sheen really, really nails it. It's a really, really interesting story. It's worth checking out. Let's see what else we got.
This docuseries, The Curse, the Curse of, what is this thing called?
The Curse of, which one are we talking about?
The Curse of Oak Island, season 7.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so a long time ago, I was watching this, and I didn't realize it had been on that long, because you think they would have found it by now. But anyway, it's about these brothers.
History Channel.
Yeah, History Channel thing. and they're looking for this treasure. It's a treasure hunting series, but
Yeah.
it's this big old family and all these people involved in it, and it's all the drama that goes on, as is always the case with these things. But man, they're still hunting this treasure. It's still a mess, and it's into the 7th season, and that's a little bit surprising.
Showtime Shangri-La documentary series, which is Showtime doesn't often dip into the documentary series, but this one's quite good. It's 4 parts, and it looks at the music industry primarily through music producer Rick Rubin's experience and career and eyes.
Mm.
And if you've never heard of Rick Rubin, he was a co-founder of Def Jam.
Yep.
When he was a college student, and wound up basically launching tons of careers, including Beastie Boys and Run DMC and Public Enemy. And it's if you want to know how the music industry works, or at least worked at this time, really really fascinating. It doesn't mince words. It's quite lively. Rubin is a very colorful character, and you learn an awful lot. It's not just kind of a sensational look at here all the ins and outs of a really messed up industry. It really takes you through it in a very very entertaining way. It's quite good. One of the more popular shows on streaming is The Bureau, the French series,
Oh
now
yeah.
in season 5, with Mathieu Amalric, just absolutely nailing it. This is Mathieu Kassovitz absolutely nails it. I mean, this is a really really great espionage / procedural show, and it's very intense. It's I'm surprised it hasn't been remade here like they did with the Israeli show
Was it
Claire Danes.
yeah, Homeland?
Homeland.
Yeah.
So Homeland, like if you've seen the Israeli version of that, oh, no brainer. I kind of felt the same thing about this, like, oh, the Bureau is going to totally get an American reboot. Hasn't yet, so I'm still expecting it, but maybe they feel like this version of it is good enough to really really hold its own. Anyway, really globe trotting, high production value, like we were talking about with the German show. I really really worth checking out. Season 5 is every bit as intense as anything that's come before it.
Flesh and Blood, a really well-produced British miniseries with Imelda Staunton and Stephen Ray and all these sort of extraordinary British actors. Uh, Family drama is what's going on here, and it ends up involving a murder. Stephen Ray, Imelda Staunton, British drama. What can I say? It's a
Yeah, you had me at Imelda Staunton. That's all. Honestly, that's all I needed. Starting to wrap out here before we get into our interview with Hadil Reda. The Plot Against America, which was created by David Simon of The Wire, along with Ed Burns, and it's based on the Philip Roth novel, which is one of these alternate history things that I think we kind of wore that out a little bit,
mm,
but this treats it less kind of genre, less sci-fi-ish, and a little bit more intelligently. Um, anyway, it looks primarily at this New Jersey Jewish family, and the Charles Lindbergh plays a part in this, and I won't tell you exactly how the alternate history wraps out. But it really is quite a fascinating look at some very very real figures and events that might have become this alternate history if not for certain other very small events that may or may not have happened. I know that's very cryptic, but
yeah.
most of these alternate history things, like what if the South had won the Civil War?
Oh,
Well,
the man in the high castle. And,
Man in a High Castle, right? Like a lot of these, just they're not even realistic. They're not even close. They're not even trying. This actually is trying, and it's trying to be informative and scholarly and a little bit educational about it. Yeah, there's some leaps of logic, but great cast. Winona Ryder and David Krumholtz, John Turturro, a lot of great people in this, and very very smartly written. So that is the HBO limited series, The Plot Against America, worth checking out.
mm-hmm.
Any that we've missed here that we should do as a final one, Tim?
Not
Do you
off
think?
the top of my head. I think we sort of ground it all
Oh,
down pretty good. What do you got?
yeah, you know what? Here's a good one to end on. The documentary, What She Said, The Art of Pauline Kael.
Oh yes.
Um, so a lot of our colleagues worked with Pauline Kael. were acolytes of hers, for the early parts of their careers, and sort of learned at the hem of her skirt, we might say. Um, and I I I appreciate what this film is trying to do. I think there's a lot more to Pauline Kael than what this film gives you. I think she's much more complex than one film can possibly contain. But as a starter for why she was such a significant figure in film criticism and in film history, and you have to realize at this point in time, film critics could make an impact in ways they can't anymore. Like
Yeah.
film critics just don't mean anything anymore today. It's hard enough for a film to become meaningful. Pauline Kael could make or break a movie, and she was caustic and a brilliant writer, and really didn't care what the impact of her writing was. She was going to lay it on the line the way that she saw it. She was just going to call it the way she saw it, and it's a great beginning to understanding Pauline Kael, but I don't think it's by any means the complete picture. So really worth checking out. Rob Garver is the director and producer and editor of this, and does quite a good job. The also worth noting is that our very good friend Doug Blush was a supervising editor on this, so that's one reason why it is so well put together. Doug Blush is one of the top editors and producers in the documentary world, and a really great guy. He helped work on
Yeah.
our documentary Schlock all those many years ago.
Yeah.
And Sarah Jessica Parker is the voice of Pauline Kael when they need a voice, and she does a wonderful job doing
And
it.
reading
So
letters. Well, but Pauline, I was a fan of Pauline Kael. She was a food writer before she became a film critic. But
yeah,
in that period in the middle '60s to the early '70s, when what they call the new Hollywood filmmakers were emerging,
yeah, yeah,
she was a big fan of what they were doing, and so you might not necessarily say that she made people like Scorsese or whoever, but she certainly was writing about the work that they were doing in ways that hadn't been written about before. And she would Pauline she would be very descriptive in her reviews of things. So that kill scene in Bonnie and Clyde, or
yeah,
when the blood comes down on Carrie. If
yeah,
some of the stuff that happens in Taxi Driver, if you read her reviews of those films, she
yeah.
really took you inside it. So
Yes, she
that's
did.
that's the way that was Pauline Kael.
Yes, she did. All right, with that, we are now going to dovetail into our interview with a filmmaker, producer, executive, and in this case also co-screenwriter Hadil Reda for the film The Ride. She produces, she co-wrote the screenplay. Amazing true story, and we're just going to take it off from here and let you listen to Hadil Reda talking about The Ride.
So we are really, really excited this week to be able to talk to film executive and film producer Hadil Reda, who has been around for a long time and has been involved with a lot of really interesting films, all the way back to Tim will remember the film Heartbreakers with Sigourney Weaver and Gene Hackman, 16 Blocks, which was a terrific action film. And Hadil is involved in a new film that has a really interesting history to it called The Ride. It's a true story, was supposed to be released months ago. And Hadil, thank you for being with us today. Really, really appreciate your coming on to talk about um, the challenges of getting a film released in the era of COVID when you were supposed to be released theatrically and you've had to pivot and you've had to make all these adjustments. Talk a little bit about the film, which is such a really great true story, how it came together, and how you kind of what happened when COVID interfered with the release of the film.
Thank you for having me, first of all, on the show. Yeah, it's a really interesting, long journey for this movie. And just when we thought we were done with the journey, along came COVID. So it added a complication that you just think you're past the finish line, and then you're like, nope, no, not the case. And as you know how independent movies go, um, there's always the obstacles from beginning to end. But we shot this movie literally 4 years ago is when we shot this film, and it's been kind of a long road in terms of we cutting, recutting, and we tested the film, and the film tested through the roof with audiences. It tested, at 97% or something. It was a really high score, like along the same line as Green Book or one of those films. And we were able to get theatrical distribution on the film through Roadside Attractions, who's got a phenomenal record with releasing these types of independent films in that market. They released Peanut Butter Falcon. They released a bunch of films that people wouldn't have thought would be a box office success, and they really were, and they knew how to market it. So we were overjoyed when Roadside picked up the film, and we were slated for a July release on 600 screens plus. We had a wide release. We were ready to go, and we kept waiting it out. And then along came COVID in March, and we just waited month by month, hoping that we could condense and press our publicity time and maybe have a shorter lead time, and none of it just didn't work. And at some point we had to call it. And the problem really was because the market was getting so oversaturated with the films that were pushed. We knew every month we waited that the theatrical films were going to get it was going to be a bottleneck at some point, and we knew we couldn't survive in that bottleneck of all these bigger films. And it was Tenet and Wonder Woman and all these things, so we were juggling constantly day to day. We were looking at the schedule and when things were going to open up and what was going to open up, and then how we would fare and where we'd fall. And so we decided to just go the way of streaming, and that was that was a tough decision, but I guess really it is the best thing for the film at this point, because people are still at home. A lot of the major markets are still not open. People are watching at home. They're watching films all the time. Nobody knew that we were going to go this long. So we have the film is now being premiered on Amazon Prime next Friday, this Friday, the 3rd, November 13th. And that's the result. It's not a bad result. It's actually pretty good given the circumstances. But of course, we were heartbroken because all the work it took to get this little passion project to the big screen, and we really felt like it could have been a sleeper hit. It's a great movie. It has a ton of heart to it, and it was great alternative programming. So yeah, that's sort of the story of this little film called The Ride.
And just to sort of underline the plot a little bit here, it's the true story of John Bolchins, who is a major BMX figure and who had this incredibly troubled upbringing, a delinquent youth, grew up just basically basically was a white supremacist at this point when he's adopted by a mixed race couple, and which changes his life, and played in the film by Sasha Alexander as his mom and Ludacris as his dad.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find so fascinating is the casting of Ludacris, who is what we Tim and I talk about this all the time, that rappers, music industry people typically don't do well in movies, but rappers do, and they seem to have this knack for adapting to have an incredible range. Ludacris, we all obviously remember from Crash, Best Picture winner. And this is not typically, this is a professional, heartwarming father, family man figure, which is not what we would normally associate Ludacris with as being a rapper. But he nails it. It's really an incredible turn for him. So could you talk a little bit too about how the casting came together, and when I have to imagine there were other actors who would have wanted this part because it's a great part. What made you guys settle on him?
I mean, he was really the first place we stopped, and we all loved him, and I think it was because of Crash. And Chris, and it's Chris Bridges, and he goes by Ludacris Bridges with his acting, and I think he just has such a natural ability to pull people in. And the role was definitely something that was different for him. He hadn't played this role before. It was very, very different from what he did in Crash or any other film. because he plays a dad. He plays a dad that is struggling with parenthood, any kind of parenthood, and he is a dad himself, and he's a great dad. He's a terrific father. He has these amazing daughters, and he really was able to make that character feel so relatable. And anybody who has kids knows that feeling, right? And he improv'd a lot too. A lot of the stuff that came out in the film was Chris just sort of like, this is sort of the way it feels, and I think it came across very natural, and people just respond to that.
It is. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. Go on.
And then the other thing I just want to say about it is that this, what appealed to him about the story, I think, was also the message of this was very different from a lot of other films that tackle this race issue. And I think the thing that really pulled him in was the fact that, it's always hard work. I mean, whether you have an issue of foster care or your own kid, or you have race mixed into the picture. I mean, it is always hard work and perseverance. And if you just kind of stick to that commitment and you follow your heart and you know that love will sort of lead the way, you're going to persevere. And I think that's the beauty of that message. And I think that's what really, he held that torch for us through the film and through the process.
Tim, you were saying something.
Well, it does in fact seem sort of apropos to the moment that we're dealing with, particularly after some of the issues regarding Black Lives Matter and all of that. This summer, this film thematically seems to sort of fit the moment. So I'm wondering, with that in mind, how the adapting to coming out as a streaming film, how you considered that, the way the film would sort of like fit into the moment of the zeitgeist.
Well, I personally would have still liked to see this film in theaters at this moment in time with everything going on in this country. Regardless of, I think it still would have had the benefit of that marketing, but I still believe that with it dropping on Amazon, and I think people will see it, and I think it will catch some word of mouth. And look, it is a movie that at its theme is about closing that bridge and closing the divide, and not judging every book by its cover. And just because it seems like it's looking one way, if you dig a little deeper, you'll find maybe that there's something else there, and there's something more there. And I think that's exactly what all of us need to be looking at right now, is that it's just so easy to look at something and say, well, if it's doing this, it's got to be this, and I think that this movie kind of turns that on its head a little bit, because you have this kid who's from a white supremacist family who has been abused and tortured because he's got a swastika on his neck when he spends his childhood basically in juvie, and has a really, really difficult time with race. And he comes out of that only to find that he has now a Black foster dad who has his own issues with race from his past. So they have to really put those two things aside to connect, find happiness, and thrive and survive. And it's really kind of beautiful how that works. And I think that to me is just very symbolic of where we are now. Is we've got to put some of these notions aside, our past, these past things that we have bought into, whether it's through our own lives or through the media, and really connect with human beings. And I think that's, to me, that really is. I'm hoping that's what it speaks to with audiences.
Well, what really spoke to me is, and there've been a number of films about this as well, including the documentary about the Chicago
Mm,
crew team, and where it's not about the big picture about legislation and the political process. It's about the little things that individual people do. And what fascinates me about the story is that it is true. This isn't something that some writer cooked up, to just sort of preach to people about how to change their lives. It literally happened. This family actually did come together in this incredibly brave way. Could you talk about the real story here, and whatever contact you had with the real, Bolchin's family, and how that kind of morphed into the movie?
Well, John Bolchins honestly is one of the most positive, strongest people I've ever met in my life. And even as we were writing the screenplay, and we went through a lot of his life, as you can imagine in the research of this, a lot of it we had to play down a little bit because it was too harsh. I mean, what he went through in real life was just, it was something I didn't want to go to that depth because I thought it would be traumatizing.
Hmm.
So we didn't tell all of what this poor child went through. We definitely tried to water that down a little bit. But he really, when you know what he went through and how this man still was able to come out of it and be as successful of a human being that he is now, it's kind of amazing. And he's still very close to his parents. And you would never know. You would never know by meeting John Bolchins that uh, he had been through that type of upbringing, because he's just full of love to everybody, love, forgiveness, tolerance, acceptance, like all those things. Those are real. So whenever, when we used to screen this film at, we'd go to festivals, and people would say, parents and teens would come up to us and say, well, we thought our life was difficult, but now we can see that we can do anything. I mean, what he went through is nothing compared to the problems that I'm facing in my life. And look at him. And I think that was the real message that he had. And he's a big spokesman in the foster care arena as well. He's quite involved in all of that. But he was on set every day, and he was really kind of giving us his input of how the story went down and his relationship with his parents. I mean, he was really the heart of the movie. So he's just fantastic.
I had another question about your whole distribution situation. Understanding that it's a really tough situation to not only achieve a theatrical distribution, a tough thing all about itself, but then to lose it in these circumstances. But Wade will attest to the fact that he and I are critics on Film Week, and over the last 6 or 7 months, pretty much all of that sort of separation between movies, theatrical movies, streaming movies, Netflix, films that we did not used to talk about on Film Week are films that we talk about now. Films that are on Netflix and streaming on Prime, and frankly, even TV series. So the entire ecosystem has changed so much that, frankly, nothing about being theatrically released anymore really matters to those of us who talk about movies. So in some ways, it sort of equalizes the playing field a little bit with that divide being gone. I don't know if you've noticed that or if it makes any difference in the way your film exists out there, but have you thought about that at all?
I mean, I have, and I think about it as not just for this movie. I think about it for my upcoming movies and how to proceed and how to move forward with, I'm in development now on several films that are meant to be theatrical. And I kind of wonder now what that road looks like, because you're right, it has been equalized. And, when you're scrolling through iTunes or Hulu or anything else right now, you're kind of like, I'm not really sure what the difference is. So what is going to make those films stand out. And it's the same thing that was in the theatrical market. It's going to be word of mouth, and how people are talking. I watched this. I like this. Check this out. I mean, but it's very strange. It is very strange because we've been taught to, have standards of quality, and that is kind of changing with this this new era of no theatrical, at least for the moment, and who knows where that ends up. But some of the things that you're seeing now on streaming, some of it's just they're fantastic. You would see them in a theater, and some of them not at all. But you have to go through a lot of stuff. So I don't know. I'm not really sure what the issue is. I am hoping that our film is a bit of a standout as a new title, and as new films drop, I have noticed they are getting a lot of views. So I'm hoping that helps the film get its legs.
If you kind of step back, if you had known when you were making the film, and obviously hoping for theatrical release, if you had known then that this would happen now, would it have changed any of your thinking about how the film was made, or how you would go about selling it, or would you not change a thing?
No, I don't think I would change a thing. I mean, obviously, we put a lot more work in the detail of this film for a theatrical, as you know. Like, you spend more time on the music and the sound and everything. You finish a film to be seen in theaters for that experience. There is an experience to that, and it is a different mindset when you're filming and finishing a movie with a theatrical in mind. It's just that different process, but I don't think it's lost on the streaming. I think it's just there's more nuance to that experience if you do see it in a theater. There's a lot more to get from it.
Well, that's great. Tim, did you have any other thoughts?
I deeply appreciate the movie, what it's about. I have seen it, and I do want to tell audiences to get out there and check it out. It will affect you and have a lot of meaning for you in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that there are a lot of, for BMX people, there are cameos in there that I think will resonate and that they'll get a kick out of. But it is, kudos to you at an age when it's really easy to make a lot of dark movies, and we talk about this a lot too. Dark movies are just really, really everywhere these days, and getting something that's really positive and uplifting and that tugs at your heartstrings is really nice now and again. And you guys did a really, really good one. So thank you again for it. Hadil Reda, producer of The Ride, which is going to be popping on Prime Video, Amazon Prime Video, on Friday, November 13th. One of the good times to celebrate a Friday the 13th. Hadil, thank you again so much.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.